festival.
Hi, I'm Anne-Sophie, and today we're going to look at a concept that's really useful when you're creating images and videos with artificial intelligence. It's called consistency or visual coherence. Now, it might sound complicated, but don't worry, it's actually very simple. And you'll see that it's really practical if you need to create images and videos with recurring settings and characters. Let's take a look at it together right now. So why is this important? First, it's like when you're reading a comic book or watching an animated video, a story, and suddenly your character has completely changed appearance, clothes, or location. You don't recognize them anymore, and at that point you're lost. So you won't be captivated by the story. That's exactly where consistency comes into play. Try to maintain visual consistency to keep your viewer engaged. To help you understand, I imagined the adventures of a young adventurer, a young superheroine, and I applied this in Crea without any other adjustments, simply by generating at a few minutes interval. And you can see that the result is generally quite different. So why does this happen? Because in fact, the artificial intelligence, the tool, will constantly reinvent the faces, the postures, the style. A few reminders before you get started. Actually, consistency operates on several levels. First, it's about choosing your tool. And we're going to recommend that you pick one in particular. Well, just one. Next, when it comes to your tool choice, it's really about defining your style, your model. You'll see why. And finally, we'll focus on this part, the consistency of your character, your main character, or your characters. To help you understand the importance of the tool and the style, I reused the same prompt and applied it in several different tools. And you can see that with Crea, Dream Studio, Leonardo, the results are generally quite different. That's why, as you probably saw in the previous tutorials, you'll often be advised to use a main tool for generating your images and to stick to the same model each time, even repeating it in your prompts if the options aren't available in the advanced settings. So now I'm going to suggest some solutions to help you maintain consistency for your character. Why focus on the character? Because that's what's going to be the hardest to keep consistent, especially for characters that have a human appearance. Maybe a bit more so than for characters with a cartoon or animal look. And especially for characters with a more realistic photographic style, because there will be more details on the face. I'm going to suggest 3 solutions. The first is to use the most basic one, a detailed description, quite simply, of your photo. A quick note beforehand. Think carefully before generating your first photo, the one you choose. It's really very important because it will serve as the basis for generating all the other images of your characters. So, settle on one image, but before choosing it, think carefully, because this will be the image you keep for the rest of your adventure, your story. So, 3 solutions. The first is to use a detailed description of this photo you've chosen, which you'll use for everything else. And you can use tools to help you do this. And you'll be able to use this description to generate all the other images with variations. The second solution will be always with this image that you will freeze, is to possibly modify just certain elements or the background. If you really want to maintain true visual consistency, that is the same face from one image to another, there are solutions for that. Finally, the third solution will be to show you some tools that already have built-in options to help you use consistency. For your detailed description, you'll say can use assistance from, for example, ChatGPT or Gemini. Simply like this, you're going to upload the photo you've chosen. So I keep the photo I generated of this superheroine, and I'm simply going to ask it to give me a detailed description. And as you can see, ChatGPT gives me a description with everything I need. A description of the face, the costume, the lighting, the style, and so on. And so I'll be able to use that to generate my images. And you see, in the Krea tool, I simply reused the prompt that ChatGPT gave me, adding a small variation to the background. And you can see that the result is still overall really interesting. The character remains very similar, and yet it did add a new background for me. And that's without having used any consistency options or other settings. A quick focus on the seed. What is the seed? You may have noticed it in some tools. Actually, the seed is a number, an algorithm, either generated automatically by the tool or that you can set yourself, which allows you to lock in the prompt parameters, model, dimensions, and style when you generate your images. Imagine you generate 4 images at the same time. If you lock the seed, it will really allow you to get very similar results across those 4 images. On the other hand, if you don't use a seed, it will give you variations of those 4 images, still following your prompt, but with quite different results. So it's up to you to decide what might be interesting. For example, in Google's Image FX, where I lock the seed, you can see that among the 4 generated photos, the results are relatively very similar. The second approach is to edit the image by removing the background Adidas and then adding a new background but trying to keep the same age. For that, you can use a tool called Dream Studio, which will simply let you remove the background from your photo. I'll show you right now what it looks like. Here, I'm in the Dream Studio tool and I've uploaded my photo. And here, you'll see a little Remove Background tab that will allow you to easily cut out the photo and completely remove the background. And the next step will be to add a new background. And in Krea, there's actually an editor function that will let you do just that. What does it look like? I'll show you right now. Here, you have an edit function. There you'll be able to upload your photo. And once you've uploaded your photo, which is already cut out, you can go to Change Region Up. And there's a little brush here. Then all you have to do is paint around the entire outline. I'll keep it brief and show you the result directly. Make sure you cover everything. And then once you've really gone all the way around, here I haven't done it completely, but don't hesitate to go all around, covering all the white areas around the character, even if you go a little over the hair here. Then you'll enter background and the description you want for the background, and you'll generate it. This will simply allow you to replace the entire background, and it gives you a result that's quite satisfying. So there you go. It's a bit of tinkering, but it can be useful for certain scenes in your story if you want to keep exactly the same face. The third solution is to use tools that directly offer this feature to ensure consistency. There are several tools, as I mentioned, that already provide this. However, these tools often require payment to access this function. I've found tools like Krea, for example, that offer me a few options. I'll show you right now. In Krea, you can upload an image as a reference and we'll use a system. Here, I've imported my photo and simply added my prompt. Don't forget to set it to stage 9. So you'll see there's a slider system that goes from 0 to 1. Here's what I recommend. As for the slider, 1 is the maximum. That means the image will follow the reference very closely. You'll get almost a remake of the same image with very few variations. So it's not necessarily very interesting. The level that's going to be more interesting is the intermediate level at 0.5, where the image will serve as inspiration for the style and features of the character, but the background or the action requested in the prompt will have more freedom. Finally, you'll have the slider at 0.1 or 0.3, which will have a weak influence. That is to say, the image mainly influences the overall visual style and the character's appearance, but the prompt has a stronger say over the scene and composition. Here's what it looks like. If you use a slider set to 1, as you can see, in Krea, the result will generally be very similar. The background doesn't change, and the character changes just a little bit, but overall remains quite similar. So not necessarily interesting. At 0.5, the background has definitely changed, and the character remains very similar. And at 0.2, as you can see, the background has a bit more detail. The prompt was taken into account a bit more for the background. Now let's take a look at Dream Studio. They offer an image reference upload. It's pretty similar to what we saw in Krea with a reference strength slider. You'll see that right away. Here in Dream Studio, I set the slider to 0.5 with a detailed prompt where I just asked it to change the emotion in addition to the background. I gave it the same forest background as before in Krea. And on top of that, I asked it to add an emotion where my superheroine is rather happy. And as you can see, Dream Studio really took my prompt about the emotion into account. So here, while maintaining a pretty close and impressive consistency with the character, here she's definitely happy. But as you can see, the background hasn't been changed. So the tool is going to be interesting. But unfortunately, it's mainly going to focus on the character. You see, in the tool, it's going to look like this. Here, I've uploaded my photo. Here, I enter my prompt. And this slider, which I'm going to set at 50%, between 0 and 100%. I'm going to leave it at 50%, and it generates an image that's quite similar in terms of the character, but mainly focused on the face and not necessarily on the background. Now I'm going to show you a tool that for me is kind of my favorite when it comes to the consistency option. It will offer you a character reference upload. You'll upload a photo, and you won't need to make any other adjustments. It will be done automatically. I'll show you that right away. So you'll see the final result, and then I'll show you inside the tool. So I uploaded my photo, my character reference photo. And as you can see, I had entered a prompt that covered quite a few things, with some variations compared to the original prompt regarding the action. In other words, I asked for my character to be flying. I requested that in terms of emotion, the character should look rather happy. I also asked for a variation in the pose. So I wanted to position myself a little bit lower compared to a front-facing camera relative to my original image. And as you can see, the result is actually quite satisfying there, and I get a really impressive level of consistency in terms of the character. I'll show you right away in the tool what it looks like. So here, you see, I uploaded my original photo, and then it analyzed it and kept the face. I entered my prompt, and then I simply clicked Generate. So here I tried several times. And as you can see, well, the result is still quite satisfying. So what are going to be the limitations of? I had to push a little bit when it came to the poses, meaning that the tool tends to focus on the position. You see, my original photo is more or less facing the camera. And in my first attempts, well, the tool would kind of reproduce that same view. So I had to emphasize the pose a bit more in my prompt to get a shot from below. Another limitation is, well, your photo itself. In other words, this will only work if your photo includes people, faces. Otherwise, there won't be any character reference and it won't work. Finally, be careful. If the photo you're using as a character reference includes several people. Let's imagine my adventurer, I decided to make an image with her dad and her mom. If your prompt doesn't specify, doesn't give more details or importance to one character over another, then the character reference will pick one in particular. And you'll end up with some strange results. That is, the dad and mom might end up with the same face as my character. So you'll need to play around with the prompt a bit to try to highlight or minimize the importance of the other characters. Finally, the last limitation is that, of course, if you want to generate scenes with, well, different characters, you'll obviously need to first remove your character reference and then re-upload a photo featuring your other characters. Otherwise, it will keep your main character. So don't forget to properly erase here and re-upload another photo, if you want to generate other types of images. There you go. And well, I hope this tutorial has really helped you and that you now understand the importance of consistency for captivating the viewer. Now it's your turn. Good luck.
Festival.